back into our session at 11, or excuse me, at 10:20. And next up is our 10:15 item treatment court grant application. Jake Greer and Christy Alvinson.
I'm the backup.
Okay.
So you're gonna sit
Oh,
on
look
your
at
back.
that. Oh.
You're not a letter off that easy.
So, before you is, we're here before you, got a conversation about our application for adult drug court discretionary grant. It's due February 28th. Christy and I have been working on this along with Pam. And our hope is to, currently, right now in drug court, we're limited based on the wellness center and their staffing issues. We're limited to 15 participants. We try and keep it 15 to 18. Anything more than that's going to be too much. Not only too much for the wellness center, for that one certified drug and alcohol counselor, but also part-time mental health, because some of our clients, as you know, in treatment court, they have some dual diagnosis issues. There's a mental health component that they need. But also, taking a step further, it's a lot of work for my staff, my probation staff, because it's intense. So they're checking in with these people every week, multiple times a week. So Christy and I have come together, work along with, and to compete for this grant. And in the end, we would like to increase our numbers in treatment court to get it up to 30, 35, depending on how much a drug and alcohol counselor can handle. So what, in order, with monies derived from this grant, we'd like to hire, not through us, but partner with the hospital, the wellness center, and hiring, dedicating one full-time drug and alcohol counselor to the program, part-time mental health specialist to the program, and another full-time probation officer to the program, in order to boost that program and get it broadened, so we can allow more people with our leaders returning on board. I don't see a lot of cases being deferred. And what I mean by that is kind of going by the wayside. I see convictions being imposed. So I see our caseload numbers growing, and not just overall caseload, their drug caseload. And by that, I mean our numbers to be embedded within the treatment court. So I see us getting to 30 and 35 pretty quickly, but that's a lot of work for probation office staff because of the intensity of it, as well as mental health, intense treatment, and the mental health side of things as well. So right now, currently, there's a hard time trying to keep the program the way it was designed, intense, with only one CADC certified drug and alcohol counselor on board.
So Jake, go back on, I'm sorry, I didn't hear all of it on the, this grant would be added capacity as far as employees.
It would add capacity to treatment court. In order to add capacity to treatment court, we would like to add, work in cooperation with the hospital, a drug and alcohol counselor, full-time dedicated to treatment court, a part-time mental health specialist, unless that CDC is dual diagnosis certified, and then a probation officer dedicated to treatment court, knowing that 30, 35 clients intense supervision.
Well, generally, my experience on grants, they pay personnel costs a lot of time. And if we do add personnel, is there any longevity guaranteed to this grant? If it's 1 year, 2 years, who picks up those people? And if they're laid off, then there's an unemployment cost. I don't have a grant in front of me or anything, but what's the vision, what's the long range plan?
Sustainability.
Yeah.
And the grant covers 3 years, so we have, a little bit of cushion as far as figuring that
countywide, there's been a big push for justice reinvestment monies, and we've done fairly well as far as our reinvestment monies, and we could dedicate that, because what we're finding is our treatment work, because of Oregon Health Plan, is able to help offset a lot of our treatment costs. In fact, a majority of our treatment costs, Oregon Health Plan pays for. So we're left with some buffer there, some justice reinvestment monies. So coupled with our justice reinvestment monies and some of the carryover that we have in the community corrections budget from year to year, I think sustainability, looking down the road, I think we're gonna be good.
So your reinvestment dollars now are going to a couple different places, right?
Our reinvestment dollars right now are currently, we have a treatment court coordinator, which is Michaela Berry, which is 1 day a week, so 7.5 hours, so 15 hours a pay period, and then that's it.
That's it?
That's it.
So there's really not a whole lot of reinvestment dollars there, if you're saying they can go towards this position, or did I not hear you?
There, we could allocate that money. We can allocate that money however we need to.
But you also need that position, and you'd be taking it away from the coordinator.
We're talking down the future after the grant. So justice reinvestment right now, there's, Criminal Justice Commission and Department of Corrections came in about 52 million. The governor's proposed budget was 32 million, so there's gonna be somewhere in between. Last year, we realized about 38.5 million, 38.7 million statewide. So it's gonna be somewhere in there. But there's a cost savings for justice reinvestment, and legislatures are on board because they know that opening prison in Junction City is gonna be more costly than trying to supervise folks in the community. And it's not a just keep people in the community, don't send the prison approach. It's more or less give an opportunity in community supervision, implement the strategies that they've given us, measure $57 for treatment components, treatment courts, using some of our money and our programs available to these folks in the community as a stepping stone before prison, give them an opportunity. So it's not.
I support every direction you're going, I support that very much. It just, obviously, before we look at the exposure to the county,
Sure.
having more employees, and for it to be sustainable, cover that cost. Truthfully, the general fund budget, we're sort of going the other way right now a little bit. Our extra dollars we're sort of eating up. So, I don't know, you're saying that within your budget, that state dollars come into our general fund, do you think there'd be enough money to?
I think looking forward, fast forward 3 years with this grant happening, should this grant end, because we can always
We could
reapply.
predict the legislature long
Well,
I can.
We can always reapply.
Well, like,
And there's also a secondary grant that we're going to be working on as soon as this one's done, which is through the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission specifically for drug courts. So there's another grant that we're eligible for as well, that we'll be working on as well. So all we're doing is we're trying to boost our program so it's not so reliant on just justice reinvestment. We can utilize some grant dollars, but then also we don't want to be so reliant on grant dollars that we get carried away. So we're trying to keep our checks and balances in place. And I think going forward with the community corrections budget, I think this is something we can sustain.
Well, just, we've been there and done that on different grant dollars for positions.
Sure.
School resource officers on different things, and then whenever it comes time that those grant dollars go away, then it gets pretty tough whenever those positions have to be laid off and everything.
I'm sure it is. And
That's the reason why I look at the sustainability, the long-term vision, and that's the.
And I've always had the philosophy when it comes to budgeting that I would cut programs and services, cut them back, not cut them all together. I would cut them back to save a position if the position was that important and that necessary to our department. And as long as Judge Nichols is on the bench, the drug court is going to be here to stay. He's pro drug court. That's his mess.
I'm always conscientious of the audience that's watching.
Mhm.
Give a little synopsis of the treatment court, drug court, et cetera, so that the
So
general
treatment
public.
court is, we don't consider ourselves a drug court because we're not specific to first-time drug offenders. We are more focused on our high and medium risk offenders in the community that have a drug problem, yes, but not necessarily convicted of a drug crime. They have a pending prison sentence, so this is a one-shot. Let's get in here, see if you can get through this. If you can, you're gonna be successful down the road. If not, well, ultimately, you have a prison sentence over your head, you can go down the road. So within the drug court, we have a drug court team that meets and staffs cases, and that's comprised of myself, Rachel Frederick and Zach Hall, Judge Nichols, D.A. Forster, Kurt Quinovan is a lay citizen, mental health folks, Patty Thomas and Susie Mongaro, Chief Grindel's involved with that. We staff the cases every morning before court, and then we go in and we talk about what they've done the last 2 weeks. And the clients go into court and tell us what they're gonna do in the next 2 weeks, and that's our balance meeting per se.
Basically, give them opportunity to get treatment instead of going to prison.
Absolutely.
And how successful have we been in the past year or so?
We started April 2015. We're about 80% success right now. We've had 4 people be removed for the program, and 2 of those folks went to prison, unfortunately.
Sometimes that's their own actions.
But they sign a contract, that's what the outcome is supposed to be, either you succeed or you go to prison. It's the last chance, basically, is what it is. It's a very good program and everything, so.
There's an agreement, and they understand for plea negotiations that this is what they get to do. They get down here in the treatment court in lieu of going to prison, and so far, we've had, 10, 11 graduates, and they've made the most of it. And I think between those 10, 11 graduates, if they all went to prison, they'd all go to prison for about 500 months. I mean, that's how many months we're generally, in the long term, if you look at it, saving Department of Corrections for all those additional costs. So it's cheaper to supervise in the community, and our reinvestment on our reinvestment to the community is we have clean sober folks.
Yep.
So,
Well, I was just gonna have us go back to there's a lot of good discussion and education going on here, but to the grant. I'm a little unclear about, you presented what you're wanting to do, but where are we going from here?
We're gonna apply for the grant, so this is kind of, we haven't got the grant put together yet, so we're not here to ask the board to approve the grant. We may have to ratify if we're after the fact.
So this will give us, because I was thinking some apples and oranges, budget issues and opportunities and things. I look forward to a further discussion, and I'll pay a little closer attention to some of the things I've been hearing, that situation in Junction City with the institute there, and I'm not even sure what all it does. But I saw a story on that just in the last week. They've done 2 or 3 part about potentially closing it, and it has a lot of implications. But it goes to what you said about the governor's budget proposed versus the other proposed budget, and the uncertainty right now is so much deficit that we're facing. It'll be good to have those discussions, because it kind of goes to what Commissioner Winters was saying. In the long term, and Jake, we know how responsible you are, and you're not gonna start a program that you don't believe you can sustain, but it'd be good to have that discussion more in depth later.
So it's a 3-year grant, and it's a joint grant for the wellness and the hospital.
You guys, the county would be the applicant legally. The county has to be the applicant, and then it's the subcontractor already for those mental health services.
Okay, so it'd be passed through
Yeah.
for our contractor for mental health services. Is there a match for it? What's some of the parameters of the grant?
25% match, but that can be in kind, and we already have the amount built into how much is going into the budget already. We've met the 25% match. So.
That's a lot of that's based on our time that we put forward, because we're not drawing any money out of anywhere else. We're not supplanting. We're not taking money from other grants to pay our salaries at one time. The judge's time, the DA's time. This is the state dollars we use in other grants. You go
just getting back to, because you can apply for grants and be awarded, you have to be able to pay for the cost of them. We've done that, I'll use road department as an example. We applied, got the grant, and we have quite a cost. So for me, I'd like to know that we're gonna have that cost covered up front. So budgetarily, we're covered, and that would be inclusive, Jake, of if it goes away, how you're gonna budget for, because we pay our own unemployment, pay that unemployment too. So that's just sort of over the years, when we apply for these grants, we need to have it planned out. Best case and worst case, the best you can do. I mean, you can't do absolute, but it sounds like you're thinking that within the state dollars that come to you, you could cover this all the way through.
We could cover our home probation staff, and continual treatment court coordinator with human justice reinvestment dollars. And then, as Kristen indicated, the hospital is always looking for staff to fulfill the requirements and the need down here at the wellness center, so.
Well, yeah, our contract with the hospital, they're the ones that have to accept exposure there. I think.
They're committed to doing that.
Yeah.
I've had conversations with Charlie Twig, he's committed to moving forward.
Great update. Thank you. Appreciate it, both of you. Have a great day. Okay, next on our agenda is the land sale list discussion. Planning Director Darlene Johnson.
Be, quickly I can, kind of foreclose on 43 properties that went through the process.
I don't have any documentation. What? I don't? I have on road vacation.
You got my packet. Thought it was pretty sure or something, but- You guys don't have anything either?
Nope. Okay.
Let's check it on the box.
Do you wanna do the other two and I'll go make?
Yeah, we can,
copies?
yeah, no, I can resend it, but, I mean, it's for action tomorrow, but
Well,
we've all discussed it.
Mhm.
I mean, it's 43 properties, I have recommended 8 to hold back, 5 of which are in core habitat, sage grouse, 2 are near the man camp, and 1 that's behind the pool, and just south of Black Cap. Has at least a town adjacent to one of the.
And then it says man camp for the audience, that's.
Man Camp Fuel off of Roberta,
With the Ruby Pipeline.
north of Third, but yeah, where Ruby Pipeline had their employees living temporarily. So, just as 2 small OVL lots. So that's my recommendation, it's similar to what I've made in the past. Eventually we'll need to try to work out with PLM, or a conservation group or something, or even private landholders, the major ranchers that are out off the Flush Cutoff Road, that are those 5 that are in core sage grouse habitat, that really don't have good access. And as the BLM continues to shut, and I wasn't here for Lynn's discussion earlier, but as they continue to shut roads off in some of these core habitat areas, it makes it very difficult for us to sell those properties to, willing buyers, but then to get the misunderstanding that they can go ahead and develop those when in fact they likely won't be able to. And we continue on the planning commission level side myself, actually, as staff, trying to avoid people setting up new places out in those areas, so.
So I just want to mention on the 40 acres that's up on Black Cap, I started some preliminary discussion with the town manager. Darwin sort of has a conflict being the town councilor and the land sale person, but I sort of need the nod from the board to go ahead. I gave her a call yesterday. She's going to get with me to just look and see if that complements, it joins town-owned property up on Black Cap. So it may complement their ownership, looking at potential things that maybe I can negotiate with them to get that into their ownership and be beneficial to the county. And that's sort of a broad brush, but I sort of need a nod of the commissioners for me to go
I
ahead.
need to have a visual with that, is it on the side slopes of Grand Cap?
Yes.
It's not usable as far as future communication.
No, it's
No,
down below
no.
the road.
Okay.
We need to start to make this circle up
Yes.
there. There's
On
one,
the facing out this way.
it's facing towards the side.
Well,
It's, southwest, I guess you'd call it. Yeah,
Yeah,
southwest.
mostly just.
And then it's pretty steep, there's, by Google Earth, looks like there could be spring potential there, and then which could be complementary to the town and their water system in the future maybe, or something like that.
Well, knowing full well how well you negotiate, I will nod that you should proceed and bring back to us something.
That's a nice way of saying I'm a BSer.
Well,
Well, it's a capital BS and capital yes, so
There you
that's
go.
the status.
yeah.
There you go. But anyways,
But I'd like to learn more about how that would benefit the town.
it adjoins
Yeah.
their property, and Roberta and I haven't, we just talked in general, haven't been able to sit down with their public work guy and that, and make sure, it may not be beneficial to them, and if it's not, then the recommendation would be to put it out to the public.
It's too steep to build on. Or is there a little slope there?
There may be a few spots that you can cut out. I know the neighbor to the west has some structures on it. How they get in there, especially during the rough times of the year, it'd be best, maybe for a cabin, which, I know that the town does own stuff further up the canyon and a few hundred acres up there, so, that's only a recommendation. Obviously, you guys can look at it further.
Yeah, it's really too bad it's not up next to our property on the top.
Yeah, and in that case, I'd say keep it as well, still don't sell it. And I'm not recommending you guys trade it with the town, I'm just saying, I don't think it's best that it goes back in the public.
And I think Commissioner Winter said it best, we're trying to do our best, I don't want to leave you out of that
Yeah,
discussion
exactly.
because of the potential
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yep.
And I do apologize, I did receive his email and I did not print it out, so. Yeah, Darwin is off the hook and it's on me, so.
So there's a first time for everything.
Yeah. Did my
So,
job for
I will be
once.
sure.
Don't tell Carl.
Darwin, I think you're.
Well, let's not go too far the first time, we can validate.
Yeah. Sent it, but no attachments.
So anything else you want to mention today for that
So you got
discussion?
some-
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you gave me a little bit more time on this. As there were only 43, normally we've been seeing about 50. The value is tremendously, about more than less than half, so.
More than less than half.
If that can. So last year we were about 500,000 plus, and now we're in the 200 range for total RMV, which is the real market value of these properties. I've already talked to Dan, Dan's still here, and that will mean that there will be less going back to upon sale, back to each of the taxing districts. So we adjusted she's adjusted the general fund appropriately to just to anticipate that. We'll probably assume roughly the same amount of cost to implement and to make sure these get sold.
If we got all the way down to zero and had none to sell, we'd be what we want to be.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know if that's a trend of just how, the economy's rebounding, that people are more likely to pay their taxes now. I don't know, I think it's just a fluke. So hopefully next year we'll see a house or two that can get fixed up. Because, people haven't been paying their taxes, and we find those houses, and usually class of properties, they look a lot nicer after.
Well, the
get them
reality is,
foreclosed.
we would like to have zero in foreclosure.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. So, anyways, that's that.
Okay,
So
so you're,
even though part of that resale foreclosure goes to your salary, but that's okay.
Didn't in the past, so I'm assuming you'd still keep me on if we had zero problems. I've only got one thing right, so.
okay, Darwin, why don't we go ahead and move to the Road Alley vacation request?
So, city renewables, the Black Cap area that they've put in a couple solar projects on now. Eventually, they will want to build a substation that will help service the properties out at the airport if we continue to go forward with if they continue to go forward and we, you know, enter into that lease agreement with them, I don't know where we stand with that, but the property vacation request is for property that they completely own, which is in the packet of information that you got, and,
Did you have a packet?
I have the packet. And, ORS 368.351 has vacation without a hearing criteria, which allows either the road official or myself to make a written report that says that it's in the public's best interest to vacate these, you know, unimproved alleys, is what they are, but, and streets. So that's definitely my recommendation.
And they are interior.
Yes, they're interior road, just south of 9th Street, and, you
So
know,
on
west of
On
Ninth.
This
Ninth
is-
Street
yeah.
here,
Mhm.
is this, that's adjoining Ninth Street, is that by
So
the
there-
city and
there'll
also?
be, yes, Furtick might still own that. I actually believe Furtick still owns that, that
That's
little
the
strip
reason, that's the
between.
reason why the road,
Yeah, the road, they would not be asking for a vacation on that section.
you know, same with an alley right there. So we would be vacating a
Just-
partial alley and a partial.
Yeah, which we've done before. If you see below that, we did partial road and everything in previous hearings, or not hearings, but previous orders.
Didn't they stop at a block, though they didn't stop in the middle of the block?
Well, just from that picture alone, they are asking, just showing you. So previous to this, they've done half that block. Gosh.
And
We may
You guys have
need
vacated
to
that
take a
before.
break.
That's why we're blue mostly, not.
well, you gotta take shirt off.
You stand hand with that.
I know, sorry. Our insurance just went up.
Just lost an eye back there.
So, this part we had vacated before, and actually, that part of that street we vacated before.
No, I
But
just
yeah, up
wanted,
here we
that
haven't
just,
yet.
that's strange for it to be,
Yeah,
but that's 100 feet, we're gonna still have 100 feet of alley and 100 feet of road
Unless you don't want to do
publicly,
it.
but
I think the rest is-
it all fits.
Yeah, I mean, it's my recommendation, do it, according to statute, we're allowed to do it without a hearing. You just make the order, the draft orders with you, for approval for tomorrow if you wanna do that.
Have you worked with our assessor on the previous vacations and consolidation?
Yeah,
of the
he and I continue to
Major
work
headaches.
together closely on all the headaches that he's experiencing and enduring, and will continue to endure.
Anything else on that for today, Darrell?
That's
Let's go to Hunter Communication.
So I agreed to take Hunter's Communication on as this property that they've, I don't have a package for this one. But,
Do you wanna borrow mine?
I know it well enough. It's a foreclosure piece of property off of Highway 31, halfway between Valley Falls and Paisley, roughly halfway, probably more like 2 fifths. The Hunter's Communication just wants to have the ability to go across some existing power lines that are there and go with some fiber, which certainly will help out our customer on their end of things, so. In my recommendation, you'll see that I said that if we sell it, then we'll do our best to try to inform the next owner of the property that this agreement's in place, but as it's currently on the foreclosure list, we could sell it at any time. So I went through the auction and it's at a reduced rate of probably 40%, actually probably 25%.
Accessing utility poles, is that accessing Surprise Valley?
Yeah, that's the lines I believe up there.
It's following the exact same, right away,
Yeah,
the
same path.
same path that there's already a.
And we've done this before, been able to do a couple different agreements for easements on foreclosure property. That's kind of why I thought best that I address it instead of they bring in with, you know, property that the county's holding on to.
So I would think it'd be, if we approve this easement, they're liable for all costs and to make sure that they do a title search to make sure that there's no easements, right of ways or anything on that that piece of property, because we don't do that when we sell our piece of property. So we need to put all that burden upon Hunter Communication in case there's anything attached to this property.
And I'm not sure if Jim's gonna be here tomorrow, if he's reviewed the language. I try not to get into all the legal stuff, but, you know, just on its face, it looks pretty clean.
We've just had to clean up some we've sold in the past that may not even be the same properties or whatever, so I like putting the burden upon
Oh, yeah.
the
And I believe the
applicant.
language says.
I haven't fully reviewed
Yeah,
it, Darwin, so I'm just sort of asking you.
No, I believe that language is in there, and I can review it again before tomorrow, but, hopefully Jim, like I said, has done it as well.
Yeah. So we're good to go on that?
Pretty simple now.
Tomorrow,
And
okay.
this is to get that fiber from Lakeview to Paisley School that was over by the Oregon Department of Education and local Lake County ESD. Great opportunity for Paisley.
Yeah, that is great. I didn't know the end user, so thanks for that.
Yep.
That's great.
Now, an ISP, Internet Service Provider,
Mhm.
is negotiating with them to be able to tap the fiber after it gets to the school and the library, and then be able to broadcast and enhance the overall internet services in the Paisley area.
Next, Darwin.
I'm gonna take.
Okay. Our next item is our nuisance / code enforcement organization discussion. We have all the parties to be here, mostly.
I guess this is the organization side of the amendment to the nuisance ordinance for the hearing process tomorrow. This is only talking about organization.
Yep.
And so Jay has been working on our organization, job description, direction we'd like to, I don't know if you've got it out to the other commissioners yet
Not
or
yet.
not.
What's holding us up at this point is we still need to get the union to buy off on this and buy off on the job description as well as the salary classification. So I'm waiting to hear from Brent. I phoned him again this morning. I thought I would hear from him before now, but I haven't. But we've got a job description. I think that describes everything we need this position to do. I think we're ready to go with this.
Well, Jay, just a quick comment. And I know that the relationships there, as you mentioned, with the union, but I'm trying to visualize in my mind a snapshot of the bus and who's driving it.
Who's driving the bus? We
Is
are.
it one of those driverless vehicles?
This position is basically the same kind of position as a code specialist. A code specialist job description, they're in the office handling building code, compliance issues, issuing permits, but basically it's enforcing and maintaining compliance with building codes. This is the same kind of thing, but just with the nuisance code. We expect this person to be out in the field doing inspections just like the code specialist, so we think that's where this salary is going to end up, the same kind of thing. And in fact, this job description includes, part of their job will be code specialist activities in the office, backfilling and helping the assistant building official with those duties. So at this point, we're looking at 80-20. That would be in a week, maybe a full day at just building code specialist duties. So I don't think there's going to be any issue with getting this approved with the union. It's just a matter of them signing off on it.
So do you think you'll hear me by tomorrow? I
I think I'll
would
hear
really,
today because
I would really like to be able to get this advertised and if the board agrees with the.
So is that what would you like to have this afternoon, and then for discussion tomorrow for approval?
Well, if we can, yeah, I agree, if we can get there tomorrow, that'd be great. If we've got something that we're stumbling on, let's do what we need to.
Well, that's what I was hoping for. I'll get you, I'll get you this draft copy right now anyway, and so we can start working on that, and then if
Try
they,
a copy of the position description.
yeah.
So I'm just looking here, Denise, I don't think we have it on for tomorrow.
Adding it on right now.
Thank you, appreciate that.
And the baseline is this person would be a building code official, person, but addressing building code violations and nuisance.
It'd be nuisance slash code. It'd be, where I worked with Jay on it, Commissioner, is primarily nuisance. And as far as code or land use ordinance, is they could be used to, if they're out in the field or whatever, as necessary, they can report back to those department heads so that they can do their code enforcement or their land use enforcement. They won't be the one actually, in my vision, enforcing that, but they'll bring the awareness to the people that's at their duty.
Can be our eyes and ears out
Yeah.
all around.
And I honestly think that that it will just grow and change over, down there someplace. But I really do believe it'll have to be looked at in a year or 2 years and say, okay, what is it that's gonna complement the best on building codes and on land use? Along, we'd be very hopeful that nuisance slows down a little bit and we're able to do it all at another level. But that's the starting place where I've been working with Jay and others to get that, sort of blitz the nuisance side of it, and then let's reevaluate in a year or two and talk to the department heads and see what would be the most efficient way to make it work.
Did that thing I forwarded to you from Jackson County have any
Yeah.
benefit to you?
Yeah, and what he got from Jackson County was a policies and procedures manual for a code enforcement person, so. Policies and procedures, which would be good, but we're not quite there yet. We wanna bring this person on and help. You know, it's a new program, it's naive to think that we're.
You can sure see looking at that they have a lot more staff than we do.
Oh, yeah,
But
absolutely.
it's a good boilerplate to
Yeah.
start.
To clean
You
from.
don't have to reinvent the wheel, you know, and so that's good information to have.
It is. We had a gentleman, I forgot his name right now, but Deschutes County adopted, looked at the same material.
Oh, really?
From Jackson County. So apparently they kind of down to County.
Yeah, well, it's always good to let somebody invent that wheel and just modify it.
So any other discussion today on that? It sounds like we might have the opportunity to move forward tomorrow, if that can all be put together.
Yeah.
So then it becomes a budgetary thing, and I haven't sat down and visited with Ann, but there was money set aside, it actually went into contingency that we would have to do a resolution to bring that out right within this year.
So I'm assuming once this job description and the nuisance ordinance is approved, we can go ahead and get this posted? Okay, right away.
Yeah.
Okay, we want to.
We need to do that, you guys might already have done it, but just a little particular list of what it's gonna take to support that position, whether it's a vehicle, et cetera, just get all that.
Yeah.
I haven't addressed any of that at all,
No.
I haven't sat down with Ann and Jay and.
But as we, maybe concurrent, just so we're ready actually to hire someone that can be fully functional with what they need.
Yeah, I see the vehicle thing being an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of, if Greg comes, then Greg's gonna be, Warren uses it, and we just have one.
Yeah.
We'll work with Denise,
Yeah.
our fleet manager, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah,
Working on a whole other vehicle that
Yeah.
could be in the pool. You know.
I think the time is probably good for it at the moment, but yeah, we need to talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we need to talk about computers and
Lots.
just everything. Yeah, don't wanna leave that to the last minute. Okay, thanks, Jay. Okay, Denise, why don't you give us a quick update on this transit? Thank you, everybody.
So we're moving into the next biennium for our transit grants. My committee met earlier this week. One of our first topics was to talk about where everybody was at with their funding. Senior Center, at this point in time, has used up all of their state funding plus some. They do have a little bit of their federal funding left, but they, right now, we've overexpended them a little over $8,000. So I sat down with each of the providers and looked at the agency funds, where everything stands right now. Goodwill was willing to transfer 17,000 of their funding. They don't feel they're going to use because of program cuts since they were awarded. Intercourt Family was willing to give up both of their state funding and some of their federal funding for a total of $11,650. And the agency, since we did not purchase the software in this biennium, we're looking at next biennium, could give up $21,000, which would transfer $50,000 to the senior center to get them through for the remainder of this biennium. I believe that requires approval from you gentlemen. Once I get that from you, I will send that to ODOT for their approval as well. But they definitely need some additional monies for this year. So that's that topic. So for the next biennium, we've gone through the RFP process for funding for both state and federal funding for the next biennium. Keeping in mind that our state funding was reduced by $26,000 for the biennium, and our federal funding was reduced by $2,427 for a total reduction of $28,177. So we had to keep that in mind. We don't have as much monies to distribute, unfortunately. RFPs came in quite a lot higher than what monies we had, of course, as you would suspect, about $123,000 more than what we received. So again, my providers were very giving to one another. The agency we're looking at for next biennium, now that we've actually gone through an RFP process and have a better idea of what software will cost us, we bumped that up to about $50,000. We hit it in the middle, plus $12,000 for training and our admin fee for the biennium. So the agency is asking for $62,000. Intercourt Family overall is asking for $88,450. Senior Center, we came up with a number of $99,899, keeping in mind that they also will receive $90,000 in veterans transit dollars on top of that. So it was a little bit of a reduction from what they asked overall, but they were good with it. And Goodwill is hoping to start rebuilding their program again, but they agree that for the onset, $8,332 would meet their need. So we got to a zero balance, which was fantastic. So anyway, you guys have any questions on that?
No, that's good.
You said, though, prior to this last part, that we're gonna have to approve the $25,000 move of dollars.
The $50,000 transfer in dollars, I believe you gentlemen should
Is
approve
that
that.
on for tomorrow?
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks for all your work on that, Denise. I think the key point you made there is how well those providers work together through this to understand the needs.
Yeah, the last biennium, it was a little more intense. Everybody was very hanging on to what monies they had, so I was a little nervous going into that meeting, but right off the bat, they all went, okay, we realize we've asked for more than what we're gonna get, and
Well, that pool of money has increased so much, I think everyone understands, even with those reductions, we're still way better off than we have been in the past, so.
well, and the state legislature could be good to us again and give us those discretionary funds that you've done in the past, and we'll be sure to keep our eye out for
I'm really
grant
worried, just as a
opportunities.
side note, I'm really worried as to what's gonna happen with budgets in the state, because there is a huge shortfall. But
Yeah.
with that said, that's.
So,
So Denise, you are actually up next to, just to give us a quick update on this draft organizational chart.
so after a couple of weeks of working, actually with Josh, luckily he has a program that is a little more workable than what our 06 draft that I was trying to work off of allowed for. I met with all of the department heads and elected officials to make sure that we've got it laid out the way that they feel their department should lay out. So it's just before you gentlemen, we currently do not have an org chart. There is an organizational chart that the auditors did a great job getting in our budget book, which was a great start. But this one is a little bit more involved because it includes all of our departments. I would like to add, I'm also looking at working on a flow chart for the commissioner's office. Hopefully we'll kind of be able to work on that for each department, but we were gonna start with the commissioner's office so that general public and new employees, new department heads as they come on, new elected officials as they come on, kind of realize how things flow up to you gentlemen for actions and considerations, and who the go-to people are for different operation needs such as railroad, airport.
Well, I'll just make a quick comment, as nice as it's gonna be to finally have a good org chart for all of us, and just for reference, that flow chart, and it's interesting that you mentioned the commissioners, working on that first, and how we're going to be able to maybe expand upon the liaison assignments, because that's all part and parcel to the responsibilities that people want to know who takes care of this or that and that type of thing. So
Yeah,
that's going to be an incredibly valuable tool for the whole county. I mean, to have all the different departments and what they actually
I hope
are
so, because we
responsible.
get a lot of phone calls on
Oh, it
who
will
handles
be.
what, and, well, how come it's not designated, who does what,
No,
and
that-
whatever, so just trying to clear up, create some more clarity for,
Well, each one of us have had
Inside
somebody,
and outside.
each one of us being every office in this courthouse, have had somebody knock on our door and say, who takes care of this?
where do I get a marriage license?
Exactly,
Where I take
and
my
that's what's gonna be really nice to have is that flow chart.
And
Yeah.
is the flow chart gonna be posted out in the forum?
Sure.
I
I
would
don't see why
think-
not.
Well, when you were
Flow
talking,
chart, not the organization.
yeah, when you were talking about it last week, that's what I was hopeful, well, two things, I'll just make two quick comments. I was talking to Dave about making some permanent type signs for the ones we do every year, whether it's taxes or
Oh,
voting, just to make those permanent look nice so the edges don't peel up. But your question, Commissioner, I believe this flow chart's gonna be big,
Yeah,
and that we need to dedicate a space to that so that people get used to knowing where it's at, so they can go in and look and see where it's at, and something that we can update as well. But we're a long ways from that, but I wanna go back to this and just, I know that Commissioner Winters initiated this by asking you to get an updated org chart, long overdue. There was just a quick comment, I know there was some pain in getting to where we got, but I really appreciate what you've done, because this is exactly what I thought it should look like.
I appreciate, we started this way back with Bob Hardy, and
Well, yeah,
that was the boilerplate of what
But
needs work on.
you had
I just
you
pushed
had
it
the
on.
thought to
Yeah.
ask her to start to move on it and work with the departments
Yeah.
to get a good org chart put together, so.
Well, we were working with the flow chart, but we
Yes.
got the org chart.
you got a
now
little
we'll get to the
sidetracked.
flow chart.
That's okay.
Gotcha.
But anyways, thank you for getting here, Denise, I appreciate it. We've started this process way back when, and just one of those that sit there. I mean, this is one of many. We also have evacuation plans, bomb threat plans, and everything that we haven't finished also that's sitting out there. Get done someday, but this is the start, and I like your idea of the flow chart being available. The flow chart's gonna get quite big.
It
You
does.
know, the more that you get to looking at it, and the easiest one that I latch onto is Dave, is the facilities guy, railroad, airport, lands, right on down.
Courthouse lawn.
Yeah, I mean, so it's gonna be a great tool when we get there.
Well, even
It's
the
gonna-
clerk, because people are, she handles so many different things,
Yeah.
passports, everybody,
Yeah.
every time
No.
you walk through, there's somebody.
It's
I'm
gonna be
always
a
taking somebody to.
great document. Great
So
document.
we got past the organization chart, there's some bumps in there, but we got.
Will both the org chart and the flow chart, will that be updated by you? Because I envision lots of changes to it.
We're gonna have to-
Even every 2 months, there might be changes
Well,
to
I'm
it.
thinking it's gonna be, what Commissioner Winters was kind of what he presented to me when he asked me to work on it was something for the budget book. So once a year, we would definitely need to review where we are with our org chart. I don't know, you know, we can, it could be a quarterly thing, it could be whatever, you know.
I think if you.
It's gonna change a lot.
It's gonna change
Constant.
pretty often, especially as different duties and everything. I envision, I haven't talked to Denise, but for our website, be one of the key players, and it's easy enough to update. If we have a hard copy or whatever, as Commissioner Chown says out here, it has to be able to be updated easy enough.
Especially for the list every position.
Well,
We're listing every, the
flow chart versus the org chart, because the
Okay.
org chart should be updatable, web-based, et cetera. And each department should notify our webmaster of any changes to their organization. And then that way, we don't have, you know, stuff missing all the time. Be real quick, Ann, for you to send Denise a note and say, can you put this position in under such and such?
yeah, or through HR and payroll stuff, but, right? It
Yeah.
can come through a couple different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right now, that org chart shows up in the audit every year. Very easy to get it in the budget book, kind of that deal. I'd only make a couple comments. I'm not sure on the org chart, we need to list every single position. That's just my opinion. And then if we are gonna list every single position, I think there maybe is room for discussion on where some of those positions reside right now. So that's just my 2 cents.
You're talking flow chart,
Org chart, which is what we're talking about today.
I guess it's sort of lost me, what needs to be changed.
Well, I do think we have some positions that are listed under a certain manager that maybe don't quite fit there. Specifically custodians. We've talked about this in the budget process before. It's more of a facility duty and responsibility, and they cover for each other in that position, in that arena. So I'm just throwing that out there. If we're gonna discuss this org chart, there might be some things that should be talked about. I've said it before, so it shouldn't be news. Dan's looking at me like he's never heard that before.
But
So,
we also explained the reason why those positions are where they are at. The hiring process, why we put those positions there.
so if it still stays true today, that's great. But if we wanna kind of update it and improve it or think about it a little bit more, we might make some of those changes.
In other words, everything can be finessed, just like we were talking about the nuisance decision earlier, it's going to be filed. And I'm curious why we have every little decision mark.
Yes.
I mean, it kind of, it's nice to have, but is it on the organization chart?
Yeah,
How many most big organizations don't go to that finite?
right.
Anyway, something to chew on.
Maybe every position's gonna be beneficial in the flow chart, not in the org chart. Depends on what the need, what the use, what the purpose is of the document. What issue are we trying to solve?
Well, minus the other discussion, I've always looked at an organization chart as something that you can pick up and see what departments you have and what positions you have in it. I guess I haven't looked at this close enough to see that it's not doing that. I mean, that's what it looks
Well,
like
and
it's doing
maybe-
to me.
With that discussion, maybe the easiest thing to do would be to take out where it says 2 FTEs or that kind of stuff. I think from my standpoint on what the organizational chart is, in fact, I got one in the mail yesterday and it looks like this minus the FTE. It shows every position within that organization. It was kind of a funny mailing that I got, and I had to kind of chuckle at their mailing with their org chart with what they were sending, but, so maybe the easiest thing to do would just be to take out those, that little caveat of it. I personally think that for the org chart, those positions are important to list, because where you go for the WIC person, I mean, we know, we assume people know somewhere else, or, I don't know, that's just my 2 cents on it.
I think that's solving a separate issue though. That's back to your flow chart.
No, because the flow chart's more on what's handled within that department, which is
Like-
not position, not by position, not by, what does the health officer do? It's what's handled in that department in terms of, because like Stacy's, we're not gonna list on our org chart
Marriage
passports
licenses.
and
Right.
marriage licenses and that kind of stuff. And like mine, you know, we're not listing IT, fleet,
Right.
those other wolf depredation, all those good things. So, I don't know.
Let's say we could get feedback on the different departments. That's the first step.
Well, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've done that, yeah.
That's been the
I've spoken with them
process.
all a couple of times.
As far as individual, like we, if we got it, yeah.
Okay.
I thank you for, you have met with every department head, every elected official. I'm good with this as an individual commissioner. And I don't,
Well,
the
we-
flow chart's a whole different thing.
Exactly.
The org chart, I'm good, because you spent all that time, and thank you for doing that.
And we have it on tomorrow if we can come to a decision as far as whether or not we want to accept this draft org chart is the way it goes. And in the meantime, maybe there'll be some more discussion about whatever.
I do want to say thank you to Josh, because he actually had the program on his computer. Put that on, so.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, next up. If there's no more discussion on that for today. Jay, do you have something?
Nope.
Okay. Well, Ann, you're up. It's that time of year, budget assumptions.
So to start off, especially for the public audience, I just want to clarify that as the governing board, you are providing me, the budget officer right now, with guidance on just building this document. Everything we're talking about and doing today is not constituting an official action. That comes through the formal budget meeting scheduled in May and the adoption that will be in June. So today is just consensus discussion of some general fund topics, just for a budget build, just to give me direction to start building the 17-18 fiscal year budget. So you have a memo before you that kind of highlights a few points that we talk about every year. I'll just start right from the top there. In your packet, you should have draft revenue and expense budgets for general fund. There are a few assumptions I had to make when I started this document. The first one I list there is a 2% salary increase. Our union contract allows for 1.5 to 3% COLA increase based on the March all-city CPIW. The December 2016 CPIW was 2%. The January figure comes out tomorrow. I feel like we're trending up.
Yep.
2% might be low by the time March's figure comes out. I have seen some economists predict year-over-year CPI to be around 2.6. Anyhow, I'm just talking about assumptions that I made in building this balanced budget, so we'll get to that decision point in a little bit. The second assumption I made was, and this isn't an assumption, this is a fact, PERS is going up on July 1st, 2017. We are seeing our Tier 1 and Tier 2 rate go from 14.92 to 19.9, and then add the 6% employee pickup. So for Tier 1 and Tier 2, individuals will be paying almost 26% of their salary to PERS for that benefit when they retire. That increase equated to about a 33% increase when you look Tier 1, Tier 2, ORBSERP, and then ORBSERP Fire and Police. That cost to general fund is about $97,000. Just that benefit increase alone. The next assumption was a health insurance increase.
That's 97,000 above and beyond what we do now. That's an
Yeah.
increase. to
That is
general
an
fund.
increase, yeah. It's also, a little bit of that 97,000 is going to be because of the fact that salaries are increasing as well. So there's a little bit of that that's occurring, but then the most of it is the increase in the PERS rate. 3% health insurance increase. Right now, Jay and I are we're hoping.
We'll know that actual number next week.
So right now, that's what I plugged in, that was an $18,000 general fund. All of these figures are general fund, by the way, general fund impact. My last assumption really is revenue. Current year tax revenue at 1.5% increase. I would expect that you guys would say, hey, how come it's not 3%? That's what's allowed.
3.76.
Well, that's $3.76 per thousand. 3% is what the assessed values can go up every year that our tax rate is applied to. But our history and our trend is showing that we are not seeing that full impact. I'm going to venture to say it's primarily because Ruby Pipeline is valued as a business and it goes up and down based on their huge business. We have actually seen the last 2 years a decline in current year taxes. So I'm hoping 1.5% actually comes through. Okay, with that you can see that general fund, the revenue page, general fund expenses. Looking at it again, these are estimates. We know the pencil gets sharpened as we start talking in May during our meetings, but right now it's looking at right under $7.8 million. So it ends up being about an $85,000 decrease overall. So in the revenue, you can see some of that is beginning fund balance decrease. We continue to eat into that. I guess what's happening there is our costs exceed our revenues. And that's happened for the last 2 or 3 years. So every year our expenses exceed the revenues we're bringing in. We draw down a little bit of that cash reserve that sits there July 1st. We also have a few grants that I know are going away. So I knew those things and I kind of plugged them in as well. The expenses in your draft there, most of the increases I've talked about their salaries and benefits. I did project a few decreases in transfers based on projects and just kind of what we were supporting operationally versus project dollars. So you can see that with these revenues and other expenses, contingency for this draft is sitting at $175,000. I clarify again, the pencils haven't been sharpened yet. This is a real rough overview with just the information that kind of I know on the top of my head, not manager specific yet. So this is just for your, I guess, conscience as we move through information gathering for this budget build. So, any questions?
We've known for several years that our revenue is this way and our cost is coming
Yes.
this way.
Our fixed costs continue to increase.
Well, part of our costs are fixed because of our actions. And some of our actions, we agreed a few years back, would reduce some of those costs in time so that maybe we'd get back to at least flat. It'd be nice to be on the increase in revenue over cost, but I don't think there's an immediate danger, but an awareness is definitely due that as we continue to spend money to provide service and facilities and everything else, that our revenue isn't keeping up.
So let's keep moving down the memo. The first item I asked for your consensus on is the PILT revenue figure. This current fiscal year, we actually increased what we had historically budgeted for PILT, and we did that to balance our budget. The other news about PILT right now, Dan and I have been working on quite a bit, is with the prior year federal payment number decreasing across the nation, the PILT amount in definition and in formula should increase. However, Congress appropriated a similar level for that PILT payment. We don't know how they're going to handle the deficit. So, and to be honest, I don't know if that happens this year or if it happens next year. I think it happens this
It
year.
happens this year.
Because they're calling for literal prior year payment information right now for our June PILT payment.
And Ann, as you say prior year, because you worked really hard at the end of last week, especially with Rocky, on some of the payments, because those payments are gonna be in revenue sharing off of federal lands, which is now redefined from timber revenue sharing,
Yes.
which is another little caveat. But to your point, the $482 million that they plan to appropriate to pay PILT couldn't begin to cover the counties that will see this massive increase in the PILT payment as a result of no substantial prior year payments.
For instance, Oregon, if we use the 2015 data, Oregon's PILT payment would go from 18 million to 37 million. Well, that's not what Congress has appropriated or allowed for. So if there's uncertainty, again,
And we are trying to get answers to that uncertainty, and at least I haven't heard anything back. I don't know if you have from Riley. We asked some very straightforward questions. Ann put them together and sent them to him last week. Just for their awareness, because we know from past history in the last couple of years that who we thought understood those formulas and everything else don't necessarily understand them. And this impact is monumental, even though there's a $3.5 million cap on the PILT payment. Correct, Ann?
Yes, that'll
Maximum.
increase a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's really unknown, so.
So with all of that information, does anyone want to get a number out of the hat? Like, what do we guess here?
Well, I think prior to the actual budget time, I think we're gonna have clarity. I think they understand how important what we've gotten used to as counties for our PILT payment paid at full payment is. So I jotted down the number 975. And recognizing with all that discussion and potential doom and gloom about how are they gonna balance this budget, that they may have an obligation of $800 million under the new formula, or not new, but following the formula, and they've only appropriated $482 million. We can make the necessary, we'll have to make the necessary adjustments, but for a starting point, that's what I wrote down.
And it's quite possible that given some more time, they will pass some legislation and take some action before this.
Well, Congressman Walden was quoted in the Blue Mountain Eagle the other day as saying, the question came up at a town hall at Mount Vernon, that counties would be receiving their full PILT payment. Now, by his definition, that might be whatever the formula works it out to be, but that's the best information I could find anywhere
Okay.
on that, so. So that's my recommendation, Board, is that we start with that. You know, we might have to change it.
That sounds good. The unappropriated ending fund balance, we budgeted at 900,000 for several years. I always, throw out the fact that as our expenses continue to rise, that forced savings account might need to increase. However, that being said, we're getting to a time in our budgeting that it's going to be more difficult to do that. In fact, it was even last year. We tried to do it last year. So I'm not recommending that we change it this next fiscal year. I just like to raise the awareness. So in my comments there, I note that general fund cost less income for July to September 2016 was $1.25 million. We spent more in those 4 months by $1.25 million than the income we brought in. Our low balance during the month of October, before we started seeing that tax revenue, and this is cash that general fund has to operate on, was $737,000. That's the lowest we've seen since pipeline dollars started coming in. So at some point in time, well, we'll either need to increase this or we'll need to decrease some of our fixed costs. So I'm, 900,000 is working for us, and budgetarily, that's about what we can do.
I recommend we leave it at 9.
Contingency amount, as you know, this year, and we just discussed earlier, it's at $272,000 because we have funding for a position embedded in that amount. Historically, we've been around the $200,000 mark, and I think that has served us very well. With conscientious budgeting and conscientious managers, we have not seen the contingency asks that we've seen several years ago. So I do feel that $200,000 is an appropriate goal. I do balance to that figure once I get information in from managers. So it doesn't mean that I'll come in here in May with $200,000 yet. But I know that's probably where the target is.
Once again, that's what I wrote in.
Salaries, like I said, December CPIW was 2%. I think it might be something higher than that for March. I built this budget with 2%. 2% for general fund costs $48,000. So if we chose to go 2.5, that should be another $12,000. I'd like, when we budget, to know that it might be a little bit high, hope that the actual is something less. So what's the consensus or the feeling right now on that salary percentage?
2.5 out of me.
2.5?
Okay, I'm fine with that.
We might know a little more tomorrow when that number comes out, because it sure looks like we're headed upward. But if tomorrow, for some reason, was an unexpected number, it could change your expectations.
So then tomorrow will be January's,
Yeah.
and then we're still waiting on, we'll wait for March.
February, March, yeah.
Okay. I like the 2.5, we can bring it back down with known figures as we get closer also.
That would be safe.
Mhm.
It seems to have served us well recently. Okay, specific reserves. So I've listed 5 different reserves that we have set aside for different purposes. And budget law allows, municipalities to set aside dollars to accumulate to finance the cost of any service, project, property, or equipment for repairs, improvements, things like that. Supposedly every 10th year, we're supposed to discuss the need for the reserves. I use this process right here and our budget as meeting that requirement. So not only do we not wait for 10 years, we do it every year. So the facility reserve we set aside for 16-17 is at $150,000. The Fair Board Roping Club facility, $4,655 is actually funding from that club, and it was donated to the county. I'm gonna guess it's been 10 to 15 years ago. No increases have been made to it, it's just sitting there in the hopes that one day there might be a roping facility that those dollars could be expended on.
It actually had grown up to almost 14,000 one time, then it went back to the original.
There was different.
Because the op shop had been the other 10,000, but the op shop dollars were for any improvements at the fairgrounds, and so it actually went to some roofing.
There was MOTAF entities who donated.
Yeah.
And got the Wilton Club, and that was, the gentleman donated, wished to, since his club put it there, he wished to maintain it there.
On-site program reserve is dictated by DEQ for that program, and $10,000 has been met, that is what's required. The technology upgrade at $50,000 last year for, known things that we're facing, whether it's software, servers, I'm not sure, so we'll need Denise maybe.
Wasn't that just a start?
That's just a start, because we were looking at, just for the upgrade that needs to happen in the assessor's office, that upgrade is $150,000. So it's just a starting point for that.
Well, it was a starting point last year,
Right.
set it at 50, so
Right.
our goal was to add to it.
Correct, because we know that we're gonna be moving away from Manatron. It's
Mhm.
been,
So what are we recommending we start with as far as adding to that?
When do you, I hate to ask this question, when do you think we're gonna drop down dead half to do these?
last
upgrades?
year it was 3 years
3 years,
was our drop there.
and it's 100 and, how much is it?
150, right in the ballpark.
So it would say 50 this year and 50 next year, by the end of 3 years, you'd be at your $150,000 for the upgrade. So just going with that, there would be add another 50,000 to it this year, correct? And that's just
Yeah,
going
let's
with,
do that.
The fleet reserve, 16-17 set at 35,000, I think that was designed to be the equivalent of one vehicle purchase. I don't know if there's another recommendation.
I don't know that we need to increase that.
I don't think so either. We're right there at that.
That's in case a vehicle gets taken out of service for whatever happens, but,
The double S corner, is that what you're?
potentially double S corners. yeah.
Setting it up as a
Here.
reserve kind of ties your hands. If, there's other ways to budget for the unknown if we have a vehicle accident. Setting up as a reserve is telling the public that we're not going to be spending those dollars for that fiscal year, so if the need does arise during the fiscal year to replace a vehicle, we'll have to notify the public and do the public hearing process.
I don't see that the vehicle would be replaced in that same budget year. I see it as being replaced the next budget year, but I don't want it, the goal is, and by committee, our fleet committee, when we talked about it, was to not, we have a program, we replace 2, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3 every year. So we don't wanna get behind on purchasing if something happens to the vehicle. We wanna be able to have funding to replace that vehicle in the next budget
Plus
year.
the addition of the regular fleet.
Plus,
program.
yeah, and not get put behind, because we got a little waylaid previously, so.
Sometimes 35,000 is still a good figure then?
Yep.
Yeah, so back to the facility reserve, would we like to see an increase for unknowns? Or future projects we want to fund, because it shouldn't be for unknowns, it should be for future
No,
projects.
I don't see us increasing. I don't.
So,
How about on the other side, is there gonna be improvements to the facility this next year that reserve was set aside for, that need to be funded? Or do you wanna fund any improvements above and beyond having a reserve also?
that information will come through from the manager when we actually present budgets.
The amount that I talked to Dave the other day, that I believe he's going to be requesting for improvements is pretty limited.
So this budget still, the draft budget still includes transfers for projects, maybe at a lesser amount than we have before, but still allows for some work to be continued in Fund 103 out of general fund. Are there other specific reserves that if anyone has a desire to start. Okay, we received 2 open requests, both from the fairgrounds. One is for an HVAC system for exhibit buildings 1 and 2. The quotes came in right under 24,000. You have just a little bit of information, I have more supporting documentation here, that will come through soon. You can, and then the fairgrounds exhibit building number 2, north end doors at a cost of about $8,200. Those are the requests I received.
Okay,
What kind of doors would this be?
It seemed like they were more, I don't know.
It's
a roll-up door.
They're slide-up doors, it's insulated, having, insulation value, there'd be a man door off to the side. It'd be narrowed up, still plenty big enough for the trailer and different things in there. But whenever there's functions and everything, it'll be, be able to heat it, will make it much more efficient than it is now.
And it's been on the fairgrounds list for several years, increase at a time.
Yes, real vital, lots of improvements to be made out there. Do you, I guess right now, you could instruct me to build those in right now, if you'd rather wait until May, when we go through meetings and see all the other information that managers present for their departments,
That's
we can
my
do that
preference.
as well. Okay.
We need to see what the full picture is.
With the, yes, what the big picture looks like. Okay. Is that the, I'm gonna take that as consensus unless somebody else has a comment.
No, the open request is just through normal budgeting, if we have anything left over, I don't like to build those in at all until we get there.
Okay, every year I ask for, I guess, just a review of the admin fee calculations. So that, number one, it's just discussed, it's not this big, unknown, mysterious thing. I just like to provide information on it. But number two, to see if we can improve it, while still maintaining fairness across all funds and departments. The goal of the admin fee, is to recover costs that general fund is expending that benefit all funds and departments. If it's a singular cost that can be charged to a specific program, it gets charged there. So for instance, our admin fee recoups the cost of the audit. It's tough to decide our $29,000 audit bill, who exactly should pay that and how much. So it's in county services. We look at all of the county services costs and say, there's some percentages that we can use here to apply all of those charges back across all funds and departments. There are federal rules that dictate this process. Our admin fees have been reviewed now by a couple different agencies. One, for the Oregon Health Authority has reviewed them for our federal WIC program, and then last fall, Special Transportation Program also reviewed them and asked that we clarify our policy. So the policy is very just short and brief and kind of just defines what we do. I have Jackson counties that is very similar, in fact, theirs is very similar to what we do, but has better language about the policy. So I'll be working on updating that policy language soon.
well, I don't have a need to spend any more time on the admin fee, because unless someone can come forward, I was gonna use the term nickel and dime, but that would indicate that there's some tweaks we could do. I don't know of any tweaks, but I'm open to anybody's suggestion that makes sense and is fair. I think it's as fair as we can make it, It covers what it needs to cover, and everyone shares that burden. When we're dealing with it, Ann, I know you were gonna go ahead and talk about that, but the mental health services are now removed, so we had to pick up that amount, because our fixed amount we have to pick up is what it is. And the formula is what it is unless someone has a better formula.
So to explain that a little more,
Well, just going through it, I probably should wait, go ahead and explain.
just to explain the mental health, transition and what it meant in an admin fee calculation. Mental health was sharing some of these costs prior to their transition to the hospital. So by taking their program out, we're not providing services to their program, but the cost of our service didn't decline. We still have the same staff. Our audit costs the same amount of money. Legal counsel still costs the same. Our IT budget is still the same. So all of those things stayed there. Now we have less people to spread that cost over. So everyone's seeing a little bit higher admin fee because we lost someone that was sharing the cost before.
What percentage was that?
They paid about $52,000.
So if I was one paying the $52,000, I'd say, why am I paying if I'm not receiving anything? Like what you just said there is, our costs are the same whether they were on or not. And so if I was the person sitting there and paid $52,000, I'd say, well, what did I get for my $52,000 by what you just said?
Well, now they're getting services from another entity. I'm curious to know what that entity's
But
cost
our
is.
cost really should go down if we have that many employees and everything go away. Our cost should actually go
The
down.
employees to provide the service did not decrease. Jay and I didn't lose any staff.
But you can reduce your hours from 80 hours a week down to 75.
There you go.
But,
We still pay the same price for the audit,
Yeah.
regardless of whether we have those employees here or not.
Our IT contract stays the same.
We could try and negotiate some of these things with.
Well, I'm just going.
But at this
like-
point, they haven't changed.
And there's always a lot of discussion around admin, but we always tell everybody that's what it costs for us to do the work for you.
That's
And
what this,
whenever a workload goes away, maybe we have to look at ourselves as how do we reduce over here when that workload goes away? Do we
I-
have too many people in offices? Do we have, what is it? Are the
I'm glad you're
opposite of
saying that.
Or is there too much work put on to departments?
I'm glad you're saying that because I take my costs for my department very seriously. And so when I'm looking at software or anything that affects my department, I know that this is where it's gonna filter out. So I have a tough time looking at new software for the treasurer's department and the finance department with what we have is working and we have our workarounds and we can make it work, instead of incurring a significant cost that's going to increase everybody else's admin fee. So I do look at what my department is costing and take into consideration this factor. Yeah,
But what
my
if-
staff in my office, depending on, there's a lot of things to consider and think about there. But
But if we did a reserve like we are doing for the assessor's office, it wouldn't impact the cost allocation if we reserved funds for
no,
your
what's nice
program.
about the assessor's office is that's a specific department, it actually doesn't affect. Jay and I, the cost of our software, we build into the cost of doing the service. It ends up being the cost of our services provided. The assessor's office is not an allocable cost here. They're not providing service to county-wide people. So the assessor's office buying software, it's going to stay outside of this. The IT contract that helps service them becomes part of this though.
Mhm. Yeah, I get that part, I'm just thinking, cause,
The cost of his software, no.
okay.
The cost of
So,
my software,
following-
yes.
Following, I don't have much to add, but following what Commissioner Winter said, I'll volunteer to go home. Not get costs.
Yeah. Well, see,
The
you
one,
guys don't get to be in here, by the way. Sorry. So it doesn't help us.
But go home.
Well, we have a commissioner cost.
We cannot allocate your costs federally. So yes, there's a cost for you. It's not here.
Well, we'll make up that.
Okay.
One specific, we just went through special transportation, and it has a certain amount for admin fee. In here, it's showing $4,167, unless I'm mistaken, and that's per year.
Yeah.
And for the biennium, they have $4,000 total.
So their grant, it sounds like there are some agency dollars that can be expended on agency costs. I don't know their definitions of, so some of these costs right there for the $4,000,
It's 4,167 total on special transportation.
yeah, in
I just know it just says in my rules, 2,000 admin cost.
So what we can do is we can directly charge special transportation for things if we need to.
So you would,
I mean, that's one option. The other thing is to clarify if there, I just have to look a little bit more.
look into that.
I just don't know how the
Kate,
rule, I wanna make sure I'm doing it right on my grant side.
We want
I
to be in
don't-
compliance with that federal side and the state side of it there. That's only one looking through there. I see, naturally, one that gets hit pretty hard, it's just by the allocation is, now the fairgrounds, that's quite an increase there. I remember right, I had it marked someplace.
Yeah, they went from 13,000 to 18,000.
Yeah, $4,600 increase there, so that just,
Well, and the only one that currently jumps out at me is on the second page, the Veterans Historic.
So the computers, there, Josh gave me device totals and figures last year about this time. He has not been able to give me an update to that, but what he did for me was say, he said, okay, some people have access to a server. The fact that he has to provide services on not only a computer but a server costs a little bit more. In fact, it takes more time for him to work on a server than it does a printer. However, sometimes there's work done on a printer too. So Josh was able to give me all these device counts for all these funds and departments, and then he gave a weight to what cost him more time, more resource time. I don't have that update, but that computer cost being there, I think, has to do with what devices he was looking at having to support for the Veterans Services Office.
Okay.
Could be. They have 2 printers, a Surface, a laptop.
Yeah, I'm sure it all makes sense, that's the one figure that really jumped out to me.
So I'll get,
That concerns me though, because public health has, we've increased their number of computers, and their number of printers, so that side of it, when that comes, will concern me for the public health side, because they've added so much extra.
But will that be reflected this year or next year?
typically this is supposed to be for equipment that was in use for 15-16. So I don't know the dates of things.
Yeah.
Sometimes when Josh gives me information, I just have to go, okay, here's what I know right now, and plug it in.
Yeah.
The cost though for that computer budget, $14 million from 15-16.
Yeah.
How it's allocated across devices can get. Again, it's not perfect. There's a lot of data input, there's a lot of moving, like I said, you change one cost here, one piece here, it's going to filter through the whole.
Well, that's it, because we're going after that bottom line figure that we have to make a collection to get to. Yeah.
Yeah. next item is, new positions or additions. I believe that this morning we are already kind of moving ahead with the position that will start here soon, even in this fiscal year. So I'm assuming that there's, consensus to build that in next year. So what I made a note of in this morning's discussions though, I heard an 80-20 split. They would be out in the field. I guess what I'm saying is planning is all in general fund. Building is in Fund 402. General fund does support building to some degree, however, building department has been doing better and better all the time. So what I'm asking is, do we foresee that
Well,
there's a split here?
what I foresee is that's a general fund cost housed in the building department. So the building department will be supplemented for this position, but general fund is what I see.
Okay, so 100% of it is going to be built in 402, so we will increase our transfer from general fund to the building department.
That's what I see for the board. I don't know if you guys see.
No, I
anything.
see it that way. I think in time we'll relook at the percentage of work, as you said, and also the funds.
Well, I have to return, maybe 20% could be building if it could carry it. I just want it to be successful and for, you know, it's going to take a year or two to see if it's going to be able to carry itself. There's some other budgetary things that we're working on in that department right now. I think the first year, 100% probably ought to be paid general fund, and then the next year reevaluate if the 20% can come out of the building side of it.
Well,
Well, conceptually, that's how we went into last year's, and that's how we transferred the money, or we moved it into contingency, was the notion that it would be a general fund funded position. And after this introductory year, we'll have a better idea.
There was an issue on the sheriff, and that's yet to be resolved, but we reasons came about, so it's.
Yeah, I think we should.
I'm okay with going out general fund this year, but we need to look at what the building can accomplish after they get established.
Yeah.
so how, okay.
And then the percentage could even change or whatever, so. I think that's I agree with you guys. It was set aside for that first year and 3 months or whatever, be all general fund for that position.
But that's set aside for this current fiscal year.
Pardon me?
That was originally set aside for 16, 17.
Yeah, we're just slow getting it going, but it won't impact the budget time, so we're gonna be 15 months instead of 12 months.
Just curious, on the building department, their budget, what is their capability of providing a percentage?
Depends on what
This
happens
year?
this year.
This year, their permit income's been, very good. They've basically supported themselves this year with dollars remaining.
When you say dollars remaining, that's what I was asking, what was that, dollars remaining?
So,
They cover 100, cover 1,000.
no. Out of this position, if you're looking at this, we haven't really said what this position's gonna cost. I'm gonna assume it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 70,000. They might be able to support half of that over a fiscal year. But it's keeping their fund with not much buildup. It would be keeping it at a pretty tight spot if they supported half of it.
Well, there's other factors that we haven't talked about or decided on yet as far as the whole organization in that department.
And some of that might be a wash.
Yeah. So, be wise to keep general fund for this first 15 months through
Here,
the rest of this
February
year, next year.
14th, yeah, February 14th, so planning.
So it's gonna be paid out of 402, I will transfer dollars to support the cost
Gives
of
us
it.
time to work on the reorganization.
Okay.
Last question that I pose is any suggestions on the documentation, information you get during our budget meetings, or the meetings themselves? If you have any, request suggestions for that.
I really like how we've got it streamlined, you've done a lot of work, everybody's done a lot of work. I'd like to streamline everything, and thank you for accommodating some changes earlier. My dates are still good, I don't know about the other two commissioners.
I love the day between. That
Oh, yeah.
makes a big difference
Yes,
for us,
big time.
for Nikki.
Nikki,
It's significant.
Well, and there's just, yeah, it's just cleaner.
Okay. I'll present, budget committee things the first meeting in March. So you guys will be able to make a budget committee appointment at that next commission meeting.
Okay. Okay, thank you. You ran us in for lunch. I
I
was
did.
not thinking you
You
were
wore
going
it,
to.
well, man.
It usually does.
so we can't, we
So
cannot
happy
take
I
a
had that
recess
event.
for lunch because I have a 1 o'clock appointment.
Okay, thank you.
Adjourn, I'm good.
Any other, there's Denise, did you have any other department updates?
The only thing I'd like to say is, it's time to start reviewing our fee ordinance, so I'm gonna be sending out an email, if you gentlemen are ready for me to do that, to all of our department heads and elected officials, for them to review the fees for their department. We do that every 18 months, so
Okay,
it's time to begin that
good,
process.
good. So under liaison updates, I'm gonna just give one really quick. Commissioner Castrine has had these discussions with Dr. Gutierrez, but in our discussion yesterday, he had mentioned a potential letter of support for this Bachelor of Science Nursing program, and I thought they were gonna draft up the letter, and I thought if he sent it to Denise to distribute to us on letterhead, if we agreed, we would all sign on to support that for his
I've been monitoring
legislative.
the phone, he was gonna send it to me constantly, and I still haven't got it. He was gonna send some bullet points, I did, because it's easier to put things in your own words as opposed to proof statement. And this Bachelor of Science is, right now, Bachelor of Science in Nursing is kind of reserved for higher education schools, OHSU, et cetera, et cetera. And State Representative Jody Hack of Salem is pushing Bill 2540 to allow community colleges to get into issuing Bachelor of Science degrees in nursing. It would help. Right now, community college can do some nursing programs, but not to a bachelor degree. And this would allow like KCC or other schools to issue bachelor degrees for nursing, which would be customized to rural communities. Which otherwise, a bachelor degree out of OHSU is specialized nursing, which does not fit well with rural communities where a nurse needs to know motor, but they could be a generalist instead of a specialist. That's the gist of it.
I don't have anything else.
I'm good.
Last week I was at the FEMA and Oregon Emergency Management course, in a 2-day course in Redford. Emergency Management Coordinator could not attend, so I went to get beefed up on requirements for grants and disaster responses and things of that nature as far as funding through FEMA. Tomorrow I'll leave to go to the Justice Reinvestment Summit. I assume the liaison with the Sheriff and Department of Corrections and the DA. It give me a chance to get abreast of that arena. The Bachelor of Science is covered. Things I was working on last year, state working group like ATV and state highways and smoke management. All those are going into the state legislature now in different bills. I don't have those. But hopefully on the ATV, some basic recommendations like crossing a state highway at an intersection is just logical. As well as maybe providing communities like jurisdiction down in Paisley to manage however they want their ATV to cross state highways like 31, 395. As you might know, Sherman Cove and the pipeline that was proposed to go from Merlin to the coast. It was shot down last December by FERC. Jordan Cove folks have re-entered a new application for that. But it's good to have a subsidiary benefit to Lakeview get natural gas if FERC is receptive to that pipeline extension from Merlin to, it has to do with benefit to local communities along the way, which Lakeview is, and that's $4 million potentially.
It'd be huge.
Steve Vincent gave a real good update on the SCOAD meeting last Thursday.
So whether President can reappoint some members on the board. Those are team positions. That's all I have.
Okay, well, with that, we will adjourn the work session February 14th at 12:07.